Just one day after Iowa quarterback Carson May announced he would be entering the transfer portal and leaving Iowa, the Hawkeyes score a quarterback in the transfer portal. Their second of the cycle with Wisconsin transfer Deacon Hill. What to know about Deacon Hill and how did this happen so fast? We'll talk about it in just a moment. But first, I want to remind you to check out Iowa Floor Covering. Their great flooring products down in Bondurant. But you can check them out online, iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. They've got this tough core, click together, 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring being sold right now with self-installation at $269 per foot. Great deal, folks, from IFC, the boys down in Bondurant. They have sponsored a bunch of our programming here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So if you appreciate the show your appreciation to IFC by supporting their company. And of course, word of mouth is powerful. Tell others, tell friends about Iowa Floor Covering in the Iowa community, in your Iowa community as well. So the news this week, and I apologize for not getting to you yesterday on this. I'm recording this on Thursday. This is going to be kind of a hit and miss week for me as far as getting news to you. But of course, I'll be here throughout it all. Iowa landing a transfer quarterback, another one, this time out of Wisconsin, Deacon Hill, Santa Barbara native Deacon Hill, who redshirted at Wisconsin last year, didn't really play this year either. Of course, Wisconsin had some quarterback issues there throughout the season. Graham Mertz did not light the world on fire. The Badgers finishing with Chase Wolf. Mertz is now in the transfer portal as well. Don't believe he's found a home. But Deacon Hill had announced previously that he would be entering the transfer portal and didn't generate a ton of interest. He had committed to Fordham, all right, from Wisconsin. Okay, so keep in mind, out of high school, Deacon Hill was a somewhat highly touted kid, 3/4-star, depending on what recruiting service you're looking at. According to 247 Sports, he had offers from Wisconsin, Kansas State, Nevada, and UCLA. Kind of a short list, but also an interesting list because you've got, again, UCLA, Wisconsin, some high majors in there, Kansas State, of course. Those are all very good programs. So it's interesting that when he left Wisconsin, and I understand he never really saw the field at Wisconsin, but it's interesting that he didn't generate more high major attention. Now, I would not think that Iowa would take Deacon Hill if he had a ton of baggage. That's one thing that sometimes will cause a school to shy away from a very talented prospect, even out of the transfer portal, because of baggage. According to 247 Sports, Sean Bach did a nice write-up on Deacon Hill and his commitment to Iowa. Hill reportedly held other offers out of the transfer portal from Northwestern State, Bryant, Alabama A&M, Valdosta State, and Abilene Christian. So no other FBS offers. He commits to Fordham, and now he has flipped from Fordham to Iowa. But again, out of high school, he had some high major offers. He's a Santa Barbara native, known for having a real big arm. Now, I did read some speculation on social media that perhaps he hasn't always been in the best of shape at Wisconsin. Keep in mind, he's only been there 2 years, right? Probably less than 2 years. I'm assuming he enrolled in the summer of 2021. So that might be somewhat of a question. The one big note here and the connection as to why this probably happened so fast is Iowa analyst, former Colorado State OC and Wisconsin QB coach John Budmeyer recruited Deacon Hill. And of course, Budmeyer was the quarterback's coach there at Wisconsin when Deacon Hill committed to Wisconsin. Keep in mind, too, during the season, Wisconsin parting ways with head coach Paul Chryst. And of course, Chryst and Budmeyer were very close. I mean, Budmeyer was a Paul Chryst product, had followed him from Pittsburgh to Wisconsin. And so it makes sense that even if Hill had potentially been in the mix for playing time, which it doesn't sound like he was, he may decide to leave due to the vast overhaul. I mean, they've got an overhaul taking place there in Madison as it relates to the coaching staff. So Hill's not the most mobile, all right? He's probably got more mobility. I think it's hard to not have more mobility than Spencer Petras. I read that he ran for over 400 yards during his high school career, which isn't that much. Spencer Petras ran for over 200 yards during his high school career, but he does have better athleticism than Spencer Petras. Hopefully the strength and conditioning room can help him if he's dealing with problems getting in shape. And I would assume he gets here very soon, right? He'll be enrolled for the spring. That's why I was bringing him in. I mean, they needed a spring quarterback with Carson May gone, Cade McNamara's health still being somewhat in question. You can't run one quarterback in the spring. And I said that during my segment on Carson May the other day. They're going to have to bring in somebody. I still wouldn't be surprised to see Iowa, if they can find one, an adequate walk-on quarterback, because 2 isn't enough for spring. I just don't see how that's enough unless you move somebody like a Thomas Hartlieb over to quarterback for the spring, which would slow his development on defense. You would think that maybe they go after a walk-on quarterback. But it's just intriguing that they got this kid this fast, and I don't think it had anything to do. I saw somebody speculate, well, maybe that's why May entered the portal. Right now, if you had to ask me, and this is no offense to Deacon Hill, but if you had to ask me who would I rather, based on what I know, who would I prefer, Hill or May, I'd probably say May. Both guys were similarly rated at a high school. May had a full season in the Iowa system under his belt. Maybe Deacon Hill comes here and is the next great thing. I don't know. But you're kind of just restarting to some extent. Now, he does have a year or two. He got a couple of years of Big Ten football offensive experience to some extent, right? I'm sure he's ran a lot of scout team up at Wisconsin. But he was buried on the depth chart, entered the transfer portal after the coaching change, and now Iowa gets him from Fordham. So, we'll see. Maybe it's a steal for Iowa. I've seen some people speculate, does this mean that John Budmeier is the next OC at Iowa? I can tell you this. I have been very outspoken about my feelings on the offensive coordinator position. And based on things that I've heard over the past week, I am more optimistic that Brian Ferentz may be moving on. All right. And I talked about that during our live show with Mark Rogers the other day at Iowa Football, at the Voice of College Football. I'm not guaranteeing anything right now, but based on what I've heard, I'm a little bit more optimistic on that happening. With that being said, I can't imagine John Budmeier is the best candidate for the job. Now, Iowa could bring in a guy like Josh Gaddis from Miami, who's a wide receivers coach. You elevate John Budmeier to quarterback coach, and you have Josh Gaddis, John Budmeier, and perhaps that works, right? Remember the connections too. Cade McNamara, his brother was recruited by John Budmeier when Budmeier was at Colorado State. So it would appear that some of these decisions from these quarterbacks is based upon the notion that John Budmeier is not moving on, which would be somewhat of a surprise. He signed a 6-month contract earlier in 2022, so there was no guarantee he was going to be here long term. So don't know what that means. Will Budmeier somehow be the next OC? I would be disappointed if Iowa didn't explore more experienced options, more proven options out there. But I do think if you're talking about Brian Ferentz, there's a better chance now, at least I have a more optimistic feeling on the situation, that Iowa perhaps is parting ways with Brian Ferentz. Not saying Iowa has prompted that, but that is more of a probability now. I feel like that's more of a probability now than I felt a week, 2 weeks ago. So we'll continue to talk about the news here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Be sure to like, subscribe. Tell me what you think about Iowa adding Santa Barbara native Deacon Hill. And, of course, more news coming right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Stay tuned.